Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Nothing to See Here podcast. Hi, it's Frankie.
It's Hannah.
I don't have anything, guys. I'm so tired. I'm so hot. I got nothing.
Peanut Gallery's here today.
Hi, Peanut Gallery.
Hello, Frankie. Hello, Hannah. Hi, Amanda.
I'll mute you. I'll mute you permanently.
In game. We don't want to. We don't want to make threats like that in real life. In game. That's an in-game threat.
Sure it was.
She's gonna snipe her mom in Fortnite.
Yeah.
How dare you say that I play Fortnite?
They're real competitive.
The first game that came to mind. Okay.
They're real competitive Overwatch players.
That one, I'm also a little insulted. Not as much, but still a little bit.
She's just gonna run me off the road in Mario Kart.
That's better. That's
good.
more.
That's good.
Yes.
That's good.
That's a good one.
I
yeah.
have a question for you.
Okay.
We're talking about socks today.
We're not talking about socks today.
But I brought my sock collection.
Yeah.
That's, unfortunate for you. We're talking about the Black Sox scandal. The 1919 Black Sox scandal in professional baseball.
That's a little before our time.
It is a little before our time.
The peanut gallery did mention. Are we talking about socks because you don't like feet?
No, that's not why we're talking about socks. But that is true. I don't like feet. And
You must spell socks if they cover feet.
They spell socks incorrectly anyway. It's spelled SOX.
That's dumb.
Why do they spell it that way?
I don't know. Both baseball teams, the White Sox and the Red Sox, spell it that way. I don't understand why.
You haven't gotten into the lore of that?
I haven't looked into that lore. I have more lore. I have other lore to talk about.
All right, well, talk about some lore.
We're going to talk about some lore. We're talking about the 1919 Black Sox scandal involving 8 players, more or less.
Was it a drug scandal?
No.
Well, that's dumb.
Eddie Cicotte, Chick Gandil, Oscar Felch, Fred McMullen, Swede Risberg, Claude Williams. Those are the 6 men that are like, yeah, they definitely were involved. And then 2 that are named as involved, but maybe they're less involved than the other 6, which are Buck Weaver and Shoeless Joe Jackson, who are also all
Shoeless Joe.
His nickname was Shoeless Joe.
Did he play barefoot?
No, he did not.
No.
But
he could barely spell his name from what I remember.
As Peanut Gallery is correctly saying, these are all the characters in Field of Dreams.
What is that? Is that a TV show?
It's a movie.
Kevin Costner.
It's a great baseball movie.
It is a very good film.
Yeah.
Does it have angels in it? Is it like Angels in the Outfield?
No, in this one he builds a baseball field.
If you build it, they will come.
And then after he builds it, the ghosts of the 1919 White Sox come and play baseball. And his dead dad comes and he gets to play baseball with his dad.
That's dumb.
Whoa!
It's an excellent movie.
It's a great movie.
Isn't it like on one of those lists of 100 films you should watch before you die?
Probably.
I like A League of Our Own better.
No, if you watch Field of Dreams, you would like it better. I actually walked
Don't tell me what I would like.
Like Hannah, for the first time ever, I'm going to cite a source before we go into it. Most of this information is coming from a 1963 book published and written by Elliot Asanoff called 8 Men Out, which eventually became a movie as well, and more than any other work or subject about the issue has shaped the modern understanding of what happened with the Chicago White Sox in the 1919 season.
Well, wait, I have a question.
Yes.
Is Clemente involved in any of this?
No, he's not born yet.
Oh, good. That's good because we love him here.
We do. We love Roberto Clemente.
Doesn't he have a bridge named after him?
He does, yes.
Wow. So glad you know that.
I'm glad I know it too.
A little bit of background because this is important. This scandal actually led to baseball becoming one organized league in the United States run by a commissioner. That's how bad everything got.
Who's our commissioner?
The
right now?
current commissioner is Robert Manfred, I want to say.
Manfred, like I was like the Manfred men.
I don't know who the man
Do a diddy doody.
It's Robert Manfred. Yeah, he's not. I don't like him. I don't think he's a good commissioner. He's a little bit stupid, but it's fine. Whatever. In the 1860s, soldiers played what was called then New York style baseball in the camps during the Civil War.
Is that where
Suppose-
they like New York style?
New York
that
style
like-
is kind of the style we know.
As opposed to what? Chicago style?
I guess Southern style. Not only did we crush the Confederacy in every other way, but we took their baseball from them. I don't know. fair.
Southern style? Did they just pour gravy over everything?
Maybe, yeah.
Sugar.
They put a lot
Sugar.
of butter.
Sugar.
They had to
Sugar.
hit the ball with butter, with a stick of butter.
Yeah, sugar, butter.
It began to grow into a national game and spawned the first governing body, the National Association of Baseball Players. This existed as an amateur league for about 12 years, and by 1867, there were more than 400 teams involved. Most of the teams that were the best were in the northeast of the U.S., but for baseball's founding year, most people cite it as 1869 when the first professional team was established, the Cincinnati Red Stockings. So a great history of naming your baseball teams after footwear.
When did the Pirates come on the scene? Do you know
When-
this?
When were the Pirates founded?
Yeah.
The
I
Pirates
know
were
they're not
founded.
our,
They're old. They're old. They were founded in 1881.
so was
Not
this
as good as 1869.
No,
Okay.
1881 as the Pittsburgh Alleghenies.
Oh, that's bad.
Oh, so
Yeah,
they
they-
were always in Pittsburgh though.
They were always in Pittsburgh.
Well,
When,
that's cool.
when please tell me they had other name changes.
Before the Pirates?
Yeah. They were the Pittsburgh Alleghenies. Bad.
That
think
that
we
Then
is
can-
they were the
Bad.
Monongahela's.
they
that
were
one's cute.
no, they weren't. They were the Pittsburgh Alleghenies until until the end of the 1890 season, and in 1891 they changed their name to the Pirates.
Oh
Oh,
wow.
wow.
And they've been the Pirates ever since.
We have a cute bird. We have the pierogies that run. Love me the pierogi run.
I do.
The-
I love
the-
that too.
The pierogi
Who
race.
doesn't?
People
So-
who don't
Love the
understand what
pierogi
pierogies are.
race. You
That's
are not
true.
from Pittsburgh.
So after the Cincinnati Red Stockings were founded,
The
there be-
stockings.
there was a divide between the professional baseball players and the amateur baseball players. So the National Association split into an amateur organization and a professional organization, creating the National Association of Professional Baseball Players in 1871. The amateur part of that disappeared a few years later. The modern Chicago Cubs and Atlanta Braves were both founded in the 1870s with the National Association of Professional Baseball Players. In 1876, the National League of Professional Baseball Clubs, which would later be known as the National League, which is the league that still exists in the MLB that the Pirates play for, was established after the National Association of Professional Baseball Players proved to be ineffective. This league placed its emphasis on clubs rather than players. Teams could now enforce contracts, preventing the players from jumping to higher paying teams. They were required to play the full schedule of games instead of forfeiting said scheduled games when they were no longer in the running for the championship, which used to happen a lot. Imagine buying a ticket to a game and then they just go, "We're not playing today. We're in last place." So no
Oh.
one would ever have gotten to watch baseball in Pittsburgh for years.
Aww.
Oh, Frankie.
You
Hey,
can't do
I'm a
that.
lifelong Pirates fan. At 27 years old, we've had 2 good seasons in my lifetime.
They're
When were
doing
they?
better.
When were they? 2013 and 2014.
That was it.
That was it, yeah.
And they're doing okay now.
They're doing better now, but
Yeah.
it's not great. There was also a
Watching
concerted
baseball,
effort.
They were good.
Huh?
When my grandpa was watching baseball, they were good.
Yeah.
When was that?
Like the 70s and 80s.
That's a little before our time.
The league also tried to stop gambling to leave the validity of results as undoubtable. The first game played in the National League was April 22nd, 1876 in Philadelphia. The early years of this league were heated. Rival leagues would develop and players tried to rebel against the league because they had the reserve clause. In modern baseball, we have free agency where once a player's reached a certain point in their contract or their contract has expired, they can go out onto the open market and teams bid for them. Back then, that did not exist. If you had a contract with a team, you had to play for that team and then re-sign with them. You could not move to another team. They also
That's
bullshit.
yeah,
That's asshole.
that asshole. That is asshole.
That is asshole.
Competitor leagues also started to form, and one such league was the American Association, which only lasted 9 years, but it was popular in its 9 years because they called it the Beer and Whiskey League, because unlike the National League, the American Association sold alcohol.
That's dope.
Woohoo!
I'd be in that league.
Mhm.
So for several years, the National League and the American Association champions would meet in a postseason championship series, the first attempt to have the World Series. The two leagues would merge in 1892 as a single 12-team National League. This would then lead to the formation of the American League in 1901. And the resulting bidding war for players led to widespread contract breaking and legal disputes. The war between the American League, which is now still in effect, and the National League caused shockwaves throughout baseball. And at a meeting in Chicago in 1901, the other baseball leagues began to negotiate a plan to maintain their independence, and they created the National Association to oversee the minor league teams. After 1902, the National League, the American League, and the minor leagues all signed a new agreement which tied independent contracts to the reserve clause contracts and created the National Baseball Commission. The National Baseball Commission was a group that oversaw baseball.
Wow, never would have guessed that.
And it would last only until 1919 when it was taken away and destroyed to create the Major League Baseball as we know it today, with the first commissioner of baseball who was given absolute control over the sport because of what the Chicago White Sox would do.
I thought they were the Black Sox.
They're the Black Sox because of how they tarnish the game, and for another reason, which I will explain in a moment. One of the things, the 1919 Chicago White Sox were one of the best teams in MLB history, despite the fact that the team hated each other. There were two groups within the team, and they were so divided that they never talked to each other. But like I said before, with the reserve clause, one thing that they had in common is that they were severely underpaid for what the market said they should be paid.
Was this them not liking each other because of racism?
No, this was before the baseball was integrated, so it was all white people on the team.
I thought Shoeless. Oh yeah, no, Shoeless. Never mind.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Jackie Robinson.
Yes,
Never mind.
yes,
Leave
you
me
are.
alone.
So Shoeless Joe Jackson, though, and Buck Weaver, who were two of the greatest stars on the team, made about $6,000 a year, which in today's money is $109,000. Now, that is a
That's
lot of
not a
money
lot.
to make in. Well, to me, that is a lot of money to make in a year.
But that's nothing compared to what most
But
baseball players are making now.
the average MLB salary today is $4.5 million.
That's average?
I'm gonna
Yes.
jump off of a bridge.
That
Jesus
is the
Christ.
average MLB salary.
We're not even good. How much are the Pirates getting? Do I want to know? I don't want
MLB
to know.
has the low. We have one of the lower payrolls in the game, but yeah, I'll just point out that one of the biggest star in the game, Shohei Ohtani, is making about $60 million a year.
I'm gonna jump off of the Clemente Bridge.
Amanda, one of the reasons why the White Sox were called the Black Sox is that in an effort to save money, the owner of the team, Charles Comiskey, reduced the number of times that he cleaned the uniforms.
Oh,
So they often played in dirty uniforms.
oh no.
Best team?
Yes, the best team.
I just I you know I don't mean I don't mean to like be gross or anything, but guys are gross. Frankie, you're a guy.
Athletes,
Guys,
especially.
yeah, gross.
And I'm
So
assuming they
gross.
only had one uniform per person too.
I think they had multiple uniforms per person, but still.
Uh,
They didn't have as
uh,
many as they have nowadays.
I'm so upset. I'm upset. All the
I'm
sweat
assuming they're diving.
and BO.
In
Yeah.
dirt, yeah, and
And,
deodorant's probably not as strong back then.
I don't think they had deodorant.
and the soap was just like animal fat, and that was it. Like it was just the fat.
Yeah, so
Oh no.
I'm
I
gonna
hope
burn them.
you know.
Burn the uniforms.
players
Wait,
were not okay.
I have a question, and this is important for how gross this might be. Some uniforms in sports they require like special underwear is worn. Please tell me they could use their own underwear.
I don't know what the underwear situation was like for the Chicago White Sox in 1919.
I hope that they could wear their own underwear. I hope they didn't have like uniformed underwear that also didn't get washed all the time.
The players were upset about this. They were sick of being underpaid, even though they were one of the highest payrolls in the baseball at the time. They were sick of being underpaid. They didn't like the way Comiskey ran the team. And one example of them being poorly run by Comiskey is that, and this is a rumor, some say this isn't true, some say it is true, but allegedly, Eddie Cicotte, who was one of the people involved in the conspiracy to make more money, had a bonus on his contract that if he got 30 wins as the pitcher, he would get $10,000 at the end of the season. As he was approaching 30 wins in September of the 1917 season, Comiskey had him benched so he wouldn't have to pay him the extra $10,000.
Oh,
Was it 30 wins in a row then?
No, 30 wins total.
Okay.
So
And
each
so this
pit,
person was then not allowed to play for the rest of the
yes,
season?
yeah. So pitchers
Okay.
have the teams have their own win stat, but pitchers are credited for wins and losses depending on how many runs get through for each team. And so
Okay.
if you're the starting pitcher, you can get a win on your record, and it's valuable to have a high amount of wins as a pitcher. And if he got 30 wins, he would get a bonus. And as he approached it,
So he's at 29, and then the commissioner says, no,
no,
you're
no,
done.
the owner of the team.
The owner said, you're done.
Yeah, basically, that's what is alleged.
Maybe they should unionize.
They didn't have a union then, but they will. He and another and the group of 8 entered a conspiracy to make money on the side. Baseball in 1919, and I quote, was in the
wait,
strength.
is this where is this where they gambled? Is this a bunch of gambling?
It is. Baseball in 1919 was in the stranglehold of gamblers and had been for some time. So to earn extra cash, these 6 to 8 players on the White Sox were going to fix the World Series.
Oh my god.
That's awesome.
Wait, also, didn't some baseball player just like get arrested for fixing
Shohei
insider info?
Ohtani's translator got arrested for stealing money and from Ohtani and making bets. Another player who's not as high profile, I forget his name, but he did used to play for the Pirates. He no longer did at this point.
Yes, this dude.
But he got banned for life from baseball for making bets on the game. There's
And
a
this-
For
basketball
the games
player.
he was playing.
Yes, he would bet on the Pirates.
But
There's also
the
a
actual baseball player, like the guy that the translator was translating for.
Shohei Ohtani has had, by what the investigations have said, no involvement in gambling on his own. His translator was a gambler. There's another player who I don't remember his name, who was recently banned for life from baseball for not being for gambling on games. And by the way, when they mean banned for life, they mean banned for life plus when you die. You are not able to do anything involving the MLB. That means if this guy was a Hall of Fame level player, he would never be inducted into the Hall of Fame because he's been banned for life.
Oh,
Pete Rose has famously been banned for life from baseball because when he was a manager of the Cincinnati Reds, he bet on games.
oh. The
there
only
was-
other baseball player that I really know besides Jackie Robinson is a guy named Wade Boggs.
Yeah.
And that's only because my dad.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it's only from Good Mythical Morning.
Huh? What about Good Mystical Morning?
They have one of their, like, when they eat old foods, one of them is like a Wade Boggs cereal and had such like a weird smell and taste. They keep it in like a sealed container to compare it to other foods.
I have yet to see that.
It's an
Maybe
older
I
one.
Whatever. But no, because my dad has a Boggs thing,
Okay.
and I thought I was really confused. To be fair, I'm a dumb kid, or I was a dumb kid. So it said Boggs, and I thought he went to like England, where all of the bogs are.
Oh my God.
No, that's it.
I know.
That's-
Yeah.
I
It's a
was
baseball
incorrect.
player.
Yeah, I was incorrect. Is he
So-
still alive?
Wade Boggs, yeah. Some believe that the idea of fixing the World Series came into the mind of the White Sox first baseman, Chick Gandil. He has admitted, to be fair, in a 1956 Sports Illustrated interview, he admitted that he was a ringleader of the entire situation. But our story begins in Boston, about 3 weeks before the end of the 1919 season. Gandil asked an acquaintance and professional gambler named Sport Sullivan to come to his hotel room.
His name is Sport.
That's
His
his
name is
nickname.
Sport?
That's what he went
Okay.
by.
Okay. I
So,
was
like-
about to be like, his real name is Sport.
No, a lot
So-
of the times we don't have real names for these guys because they are
That makes
professional
sense.
gamblers.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So Sport, like, when your dad says, "Hey, Sport."
Yeah, I guess
Really?
he just took that as his name. I don't know.
I went with gambling is his sport.
Maybe. So, after some small talk, Gandil told Sullivan, I think we can put it, referring to the World Series, in the bag. He demanded $80,000 in cash for himself and whatever other players he might be able to recruit. Gandil disputes this, to be fair. He said in the 1956 interview that Sullivan came up with the idea. He initially thought that it would be impossible to fix a game like baseball because you need to have 7 or 8 players involved. And Sullivan told him, don't be silly. It's been pulled before and it can be again. He goes recruiting on the team. He begins to talk with outfielder Oscar Happy Felsch, third baseman Buck Weaver, and pitcher Eddie Cicotte. Gandil knew that Cicotte, the ace pitcher, had been having money troubles because he bought a farm in Michigan that came with high mortgage payments. And Cicotte at first resisted the suggestion that he join in on a fix of the series, but eventually he gave in. And 3 days before the series began, he allegedly told Gandil, I'll do it for $10,000 before the series begins. In 1920, after all this, he would explain his decision to join the fix to a grand jury. Quote, they wanted me to go crooked. I needed the money. I had the wife and kids. I had bought the farm. I found the money under my pillow. I had sold out Kami and the other boys. Kami is the owner of the team, Kaminsky. With Cicotte and Felsch on board, Gandil began to recruit other players like shortstop Swede Risberg and utility infielder Fred McMullen. Starting pitchers, though, were critical to any successful fix of the World Series. So when they were in New York, Gandil convinced Claude Lefty Williams to join as well. He then approached the team's best hitter, Shoeless Joe Jackson. In his 1920 confession, Jackson testified that he was promised $20,000 to participate in the fix, but he only got a quarter of that amount.
$5,000 is not a lot.
To ruin your career and reputation if you get caught? No. A meeting of the White Sox baseball players happened on September 21st in Gandil's room in the Ansonia Hotel in New York City. It was a meeting that would eventually shatter the career of 8 baseball players. Although it's disputed whether all 8 were actually at the meeting, Joe Jackson claims that he wasn't at the meeting, and he is supported by Lefty Williams. But Gandil, in his 1956 Sports Illustrated interview, offers this account of the meeting. They were all interested and thought we should recontour to see if the dough would really be put on the line. Weaver suggested we get paid in advance. Then, if things got too hot, we could double cross the gamblers, keep the cash, and take the big end of the series by beating the Reds. That's a bold plan, though, to screw over some professional gamblers.
That sounds scary.
I'm
It's
imagining them as the mob. The
It
gamblers.
is basically the mob at this point, yeah. Grandel met with Sullivan the next morning to tell him they're in if Sullivan could come up with $80,000 before the World Series began. Sullivan said it might be difficult to raise that much cash so quickly, but he promised that he would meet with Gandel when the team got back to Chicago for the final games of the regular season. So this is when things start to get a little more complicated. Another gambler, Sleepy Bill Burns, who heard talk of a possible fix, approached Cicotte and offered to top any offer that Sullivan had made. Gandel announced that they would work a fix with Burns for $100,000 up front. In a 1922 deposition, one of Burns' associates, Billy Marag, testified that this was the plan. They were going to put up $100,000 to give to 5 players who were the original 5 men out. So Burns went to New York to meet with the most prominent gambler in America, Arnold Big Bankroll Rothstein.
What a name.
What a great nickname, right? You know you're rich when your nickname is Big Bankroll. So Burns approached Rothstein as he was watching horses at a Jamaica racetrack, at the Jamaica racetrack. Rothstein told the 2 men that he was busy and they should wait in the track restaurant where he might get to them later. Instead, Rothstein sent his right-hand man, Abe Attell, to meet with Burns to find out what they had in mind. When Attell reported back that they were planning to fix the World Series, Rothstein was skeptical. He didn't think it could work. Undeterred, Burns cornered Rothstein later that night in the lobby of the Astor Hotel in Times Square and pressed their plan to fix the series. Rothstein told the 2 men to forget it, and they did for a while. Now, all of that I told you is in doubt. There's big doubt whether Rothstein participated in the fix, but it is clear that he either, at the minimum, he knew about it because he bet or he made almost $400,000 betting on the 1919 World Series.
And were they bets for and against?
They were bets against the White Sox.
Okay.
And whether he was involved in it or not doesn't matter that much to the context of getting other gamblers involved in the fix, because they all believed that he was. And it was this belief that Rothstein was involved that got other players and gamblers to be involved in the scheme as well. On the other side, though, there are those who believe that Rothstein was involved, and Rothstein reconsidered the proposition and agreed to put up the $100,000 to fund the fix. And Burns immediately got into motion. He called Cicotte and told him the fix is on. Meanwhile, our boy Sport Sullivan thinks he's still in on the plan.
He's walking down the street. He's like, I'm going to buy this with my money. I'm going to get that.
And he is, because he's working on his own.
Mm-hmm.
Sullivan, on his own, also contacts Rothstein. It is believed that because Sullivan's involved in the plan, Rothstein now gets involved because he knows and respects Sullivan. He doesn't know Burns. Rothstein's also intrigued because the widespread talk of a fix of the World Series means that they might not be able to pin it on one specific person. The quote that he
when
has...
you say there's talk, like, how widespread is this talk? Is it hushed whispers in the back of closets?
It's hushed whispers amongst gamblers.
Okay.
The quote that Rothstein has attributed to him of the widespread talk is not a great quote, but I'm going to read it. If 9 guys go to bed with a girl, she'll have a tough time proving the 10th is the father. So that's what he
I
equates
don't
this to.
like I don't like that analogy.
I don't either. It works, but it's not great, Rothstein. Come up with a better analogy. We all know what you meant. Say it a better way. This brings us to September 29th, the day before the White Sox were supposed to go to Cincinnati to begin the World Series against the Reds. Sullivan and one of Rothstein's other associates, Nat Evans, meet with the players. Evans listened to the players' demand for $80,000 in advance and told them he would get back to them. When Evans reported back, Rothstein agreed to give him $40,000 to pass on to Sullivan, who would then give the cash to the players. The other $40,000 would be held in a safe in Chicago to be paid to the players if the World Series went as planned. Rothstein then got busy laying bets on the Reds to win the World Series. Sullivan was given $40,000 in $41,000 bills.
I forget $1,000 bills were once a thing.
I know, right? So
they're not still a thing.
No, I don't think they're.
I don't think
that.
I didn't think so. I had to make sure.
So what does Sullivan, a professional gambler, do when he's got $41,000 bills in his pocket?
He donates it to charity.
He does his own charity, the casino. He bets.
Oh, my favorite charity.
He bets $30,000 of it on the Reds instead of giving it to the players, thinking they'll get the money later. There's a problem with his thinking, though. When a large amount of people begin to bet on a team or a player, the odds begin to shrink. So you get less money than you would have before. What Sullivan did meant the odds dropped so fast, the best he was going to get was maybe a little more than the original $30,000. In his 1956 interview, Gandil says that Sullivan gave him the remaining $10,000, and to secure the fix, he put the money under the pillow of starting pitcher for Game 1, Eddie Cicotte. Cicotte reportedly later sewed that money into the lining of his jacket.
And then that jacket washed away at sea, never to be seen again.
There's a problem, though. They were promised $40,000. They got $10,000, and only one man got any of the money. So the rest of the players are angry. They meet with Abe Attell at the Sinton Hotel in Cincinnati. Abe Attell refused to give them any cash in advance, instead offering he will pay them $20,000 for each loss in the series. The players complained, but they told the gamblers that they would throw the first two games as the scheduled starting pitchers were Cicotte and Williams, the two pitchers that were involved in the scheme. Conservatively, because these numbers are probably way low, half a dozen gamblers and two gambling crime syndicates are linked to fixing the World Series. That's a very low number. More likely, what people think is that there are 20 or more individual gamblers and 5 or 6 crime syndicates involved in this entire thing. They had gamblers, according to some sources, in St. Louis, Detroit, Boston, and Kansas City, and Chicago, all involved in this scheme. Abe Attell told sports reporter Joe Williams of the Cleveland News, they not only sold the fix, but they sold it wherever they could get a buck. They peddled it around like a sack of popcorn. So that brings us to October 1st, 1919. Opening day of the World Series. It's sunny and warm in Cincinnati. The game was a sellout, with scalpers getting the unheard price of $50 a ticket. Imagine that nowadays. $50 are like the cheap seats in most baseball stadiums.
And that's before the taxes.
They're getting $50 on the high end. At the Ansonia Hotel in New York, Arnold Rothstein strides into the lobby just before the scheduled opening pitch. So back then, there's no TV. How do they hear the games? A reporter.
Radio.
No, not at least not from Rothstein and the people in the hotel. A reporter would read telegraphed play-by-play accounts of the game, and baseball figures would be moved around a large diamond-shaped chart on the wall. The gamblers had sent word to Rothstein's people that Eddie Chicote was to either walk or hit the first batter as a sign that the fix was on. The first pitch to leadoff batter Maurice Rath was called a strike. The second pitch went wild and hit Rath in the back. And Arnold Rothstein walked out of the Ansonia into the New York rain, knowing that the fix was on. The Reds would end up winning that game 9-1. Charles Comiskey would later meet with the manager of the White Sox, Kid Gleason, and asked whether he thought the team was throwing the series. Gleason hesitated, but said he thought something was wrong, but didn't know for certain. In Game 2, Lefty Williams, also a part of the fix, who was well known for being a pitcher who never walked anyone, walked 3 Cincinnati batters, all of whom would eventually score. The catcher, Ray Schalk, who was not involved in the fix, went up to Kid Gleason after the game and yelled, "That son of a bitch. He kept crossing me. In that lousy 4th inning, he crossed me 3 times. He wouldn't throw a curve." After the game, Sleepy Burns left $10,000, half of the money that they were promised, in Gandel's room. So before Game 3 in Chicago, Burns asked Gandel what the players were planning, and Gandel lied to him. He told Burns that they were going to throw the game, when in fact they hadn't decided what they were going to do. Gandel and the rest of the players were angry because they had only received a fraction of the money they had been promised. They've only gotten $20,000 total. They were promised $80,000 before the World Series had even started. Then, when they tried to get that money, they were told they'd get paid $20,000 for each loss. They've lost 2 games and only gotten paid $10,000 from that. So he saw no reason to do Burns any favor. Burns, on Gandel's word, bet a huge amount of money on the Reds to win Game 3. The Red Sox won, or the White Sox won 3-0, with Gandel driving in 2 of the runs personally. So Gandel would tell Sports Sullivan that he needed $20,000 before Game 4, or the fix was over. They barely made the deadline, but they made it, and so the Reds won the game. Williams was given his $5,000 payoff after the game, so he almost didn't throw it, but he did. In his 1920 confession after Game 4, the pitcher went to Gandel's room. There were 2 packages, 2 envelopes lying there, and he said, "There's your dough. Gandel told me there's 5 for yourself and 5 for Jackson. The rest has been called for." When the gamblers failed to produce the promised additional $20,000 after the loss in Game 5, the Red Sox players decided they had enough. It would be the White Sox players decided they'd had enough. And it would be the old White Sox again. They took Game 6 5-4 and then won Game 7 4-1. If they had won Game 8, the series would be tied 4 apiece. Threats were being made. Both Chicote and Jackson described threats and their own fear of being shot. And in a 1920 interview, one of the gamblers hinted that he had threatened to kill Lefty Williams' wife before Game 8.
And only 2 people had been paid in full at this point in time?
No one's been paid in full. They've all gotten money, but none of them have been paid in full.
Okay.
Whether the threat was actually made or not, Williams did pitch poorly in Game 8. He only threw 15 pitches total, allowing 4 hits and 3 runs before he was taken out of the game, having only registered 1 out. Cincinnati would go on to win the game 10-5 and win the World Series. For Lefty Williams, who was undoubtedly in on fixing the World Series, he had lost 3 games in all 3 of his World Series starts. And as a pitcher who was known for never walking anyone, he had thrown an average of 1 walk every other inning that he played.
That's a little suspicious.
So of the 8 games that were played, at least 2 are known to definitely be thrown. Game 2 and Game 8. Notably, if the White Sox had won Games 2 and 8, they would have won the World Series. There's evidence that Game 4 was thrown. That one is less sure. And there was a failed attempt made to throw Game 3. But they were angry, so they did end up winning the game. But in general, people who after the fact found out about the fix and were looking for suspicious plays would find them, while others saw nothing that looked out of line. Reds manager Pat Moran thought the series was on the up and up, quoting, "If they threw some of the games, they must be consummate actors. For nothing in their playing gave me the impression they weren't doing their best." One of the umpires for the game, Billy Evans, expressed surprise as well when the fix was eventually revealed. Quote, "Well, I guess I'm just a big dope." James Hamilton, the official scorer of the World Series, said he only saw one suspicious play, which is when Cicotte deflected a throw going towards home plate in Game 4. On the other hand, writer Hugh Fullerton and former pitcher Christy Mathewson said that they saw 7 plays that looked suspicious, in addition to having questions about the pitching in a few of the games. Of the 8 men that I named at the beginning of the episode, 4 of them clearly played to lose: Gandil, Williams, Cicotte, and Risberg. Risberg was the internal enforcer of the fix, who threatened any player who might reveal the agreement that they made with the gamblers. A few historians suggest that Cicotte, after facing the first batter in Game 1 and hitting him, which signaled that the fix was on, then gave 100% in the World Series. But Cicotte has admitted he was in on it. He's quoted as saying, "I played a crooked game." In his 1920 grand jury testimony, he admitted that he purposely put that first batter on base, but then had misgivings. After he was on there, "I don't know. I guess I tried too hard. I didn't care. They could have taken my heart and soul. That's the way I felt about it after I'd taken that money. I guess everybody's not perfect." In Game 4, he made a couple of glaring errors, and according to an account of his grand jury testimony, he said, "I deliberately intercepted a throw from the outfield to the plate, which might have cut off a run. I muffed the ball on purpose. I purposely made a wild throw. All the runs scored against me were due to my own deliberate errors." Utility infielder Fred McMullen, Risberg's drinking buddy, got 1 hit in just 2 at-bats, which is hardly conclusive to say that he contributed to the fix. Jackson testified that McMullen and Risberg were the 2 principal payoff men during the fix. So they were the ones responsible for handing out the money to the other players that were involved. There are 2 players that are named as being involved in the fix, and they may have been unfairly included. Now, both of them did testimony, and both of them did admit to being in on it, but their play does not seem to indicate that they tried hard to fix the games. Those are Buck Weaver and Shoeless Joe Jackson. Shoeless Joe Jackson had a batting average in that World Series of .375, which was nearly 20 points better than his career average. He scored 5 runs, got 6 RBIs, hit the only home run, and didn't commit a single error. In a 2009 article about the 1919 World Series, the Chicago Lawyer magazine observed, "If he really did try to lose games, he failed miserably."
I think it would be more obvious if he's one of the best players and he's suddenly doing jack shit.
That's true. But what's not debatable is that Shoeless Joe clearly did take money from the gamblers. He got $5,000.
That's not worth it.
No. And he admitted in the 1920 grand jury testimony to accepting the money. But even Shoeless Joe doesn't have as many defenders of himself being involved in this as Buck Weaver. Buck Weaver knew of the fix. He attended at least 3 of the meetings where the fix was discussed, and he watched Gandil count out payoff money from the gamblers. And he failed to report the scheme to the club officials or the league. And
He said,
that,
it's not my business.
yeah, but that might have been what gotten him in trouble. It's not clear.
Snitches get stitches.
That's true.
If the mob is in on this, I am seeing nothing.
It's not clear whether Buck Weaver ever actually got any money. There was a report that was started by his mother-in-law that a package containing a large amount of money was delivered to his house during the World Series. But there's also reports that that package, if it ever existed, may have been returned. He also played the best baseball he had played ever, hitting a .324 average during the World Series. And there is a letter from Weaver to baseball commissioner of the time from 1950, Ford Frick, on display at the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. And in the letter, Weaver claimed that he knew nothing about the fix, which is doubtful. But more believable, he personally played a perfect series. Not only do we have the fix, there is also, as we all know, the famous quote, "The cover-up was worse than the crime." We have the cover-up and how they tried to stop it from getting out.
I don't think there was one.
There
was, but it was not good.
The cover-up was apparently far better organized than the fix. Owners, managers, players, and the press were all involved in covering it up because no one wanted America's pastime to be destroyed by showing that the World Series had been fixed. Charles Comiskey, who owned the team, tried to discourage talk of a fix brought on by his team's performance in the series by issuing a statement to the press. He said, "I believe my boys fought the battle of the recent World Series on the level, as they have always done. And I would be the first to want information to the contrary. I would give $20,000 to anyone unearthing information to that effect." In private, though, Comiskey was suspicious. He hired a private detective to investigate the finances of 7 of the 8 men who were part of the original conspiracy. The only player not under suspicion was Buck Weaver. This would all be blown up in the winter baseball meetings on December 15th, 1919, when Hugh Fullerton, a Chicago sports writer, published a story with the headline, "Is Big League Baseball being run for gamblers with baseball players in the deal?"
That's not a good headline.
It's not. Not when you're
That's
trying.
mouthy.
Well, that's true. It's also not a good headline for people involved in baseball.
Well, that too.
Fullerton in the article angrily demanded that baseball confront its gambling problem, and he suggested that Judge Keensaw Mountain Landis be appointed to head a special investigation into gambling's influence on baseball. I would like to say that this man was a former judge and would eventually become the first commissioner of baseball who ruled the game with an iron fist and also a horrible racist. Just an awful human being.
Throw him out a window.
He is credited for cleaning up baseball after this whole thing went down, but he also banned black baseball players from organized baseball.
Fuck this guy.
Fuck this guy right in his ass.
And I will say though, Mountain is his real last name or middle name. His middle name is Mountain.
I hope he's enjoying hell.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Mountain?
His name is Keenasaw Mountain Landis.
His mother didn't love him, and I can see why.
Talk of a fix in the 1919 series continued through the winter months into 1920. In July, White Sox manager Kid Gleason ran into Abe Attell, who worked for Rothstein, at a New York bar. And at that bar, Attell confirmed Gleason's suspicions about the fix. "You know, kid, I hated to do that to you, but I thought I was going to make a bundle, and I needed it. Attell revealed that Arnold Rothstein was the big money man behind the fix. Kid Gleason went to the press with the story, but because they were all afraid of libel suits, they refused to print it.
I
Reports.
love like the way this was confirmed was just a drunk man at a bar.
How did this get exposed? Because obviously we know about it now. I just read a bunch of fucking details about it. Just as the White Sox were in a close fight for the 1920 American League Championship, reports came in about another fix in a Chicago Cubs Philadelphia Phillies game, and a grand jury was convened in Cook County. Assistant State Attorney Hartley Replogle sent out dozens of subpoenas, and one of the men called to testify was New York Giants pitcher Rube Benton. Rube Benton told the grand jury that he saw a telegram sent in late September of 1919 to a Giants teammate from Sleepy Burns, stating that the Sox were going to lose the 1919 series. He also revealed that he learned that Gandil, Felsch, Williams, and Cicotte were all among those in on the fix. 2 days later, the Philadelphia North American ran an interview with gambler Billy Maurag, providing the public for the first time with many of the details of the scandal. Cicotte regretted his participation in the fix. He seemed to have been stewing over it all summer, and perhaps because of the Maurag interview, or perhaps because he knew that he was about to be implicated in the fix, he decided to talk. He told the grand jury, "I don't know why I did it. I must have been crazy. Risberg, Gandil, and McMullen were at me for a week before the series began. They wanted me to go crooked. I don't know. I needed the money. I had the wife and kids. The wife and kids don't know about this. I don't know what they'll think. I've lived for 1,000 years in the last 12 months. I would not have done that thing for $1 million. Now I've lost everything. Job, reputation, everything. My friends all bet on the Sox. I knew, but I couldn't tell them." Imagine being this guy's friend and then learning this. Within hours, the other Sox players that were involved learned that he had talked. So then Shoeless Joe Jackson turns up in the chambers of the presiding judge, Charles McDonald, and begins testifying. 2 hours later, he walks out of the jury room telling two of the bailiffs, "I got a big load off my chest." On the way out of the courthouse, according to a story that ran in the Chicago Herald and Examiner, a youngster said to Jackson, "It ain't so, Joe, is it?" To which Jackson replied, "Yeah, kid, I'm afraid it is." Shoeless Joe later denies that this ever occurred. His account of any exchange that ever occurred was, "The only one who spoke was a guy who yelled at his friend, 'See, I told you he wore shoes.'"
That's kind of good. That's kind of good.
That would be
That would
your
be-
reaction, Amanda.
Yeah, that would be me and Amanda.
So Gandil, Risberg, and McMullen were not happy with this and let Shoeless Joe Jackson know. According to Shoeless Joe, the other players told him before his testimony, "You poor simp, go ahead and squawk. We'll all say you're a liar." Jackson asked for protection from the bailiffs when he left the jury room because he believed that Risberg was threatening to kill him. That same day, in his office at Comiskey Park, yes, Charles Comiskey named the park after himself.
Tell me you're conceited without telling me you're conceited.
It's still named Comiskey Park to this day. Dictated a telegram that would be sent to these 8 players and then made public. "You and each of you are hereby notified of your indefinite suspension as a member of the Chicago American League Baseball Club." With that telegram, the hopes of White Sox fans for the 1920 championship came to an end. The final games would still be played, and in a moment of blatant 1920 racism, Harry Grabner, the White Sox secretary, told the press, We'll play out the schedule if we have to get Chinamen to replace the suspended players.
I don't like that.
No, not great. Not a great look, Harry
No.
Grabner. So what are the gamblers up to? Well, they've hired an attorney, William Fallon.
One single attorney.
He's representing most of the gamblers.
Is he a good lawyer?
What do you mean by good?
Is he going to be able to get them out of this?
Yes, because
Okay.
because while he's good at that part, he's not an ethical lawyer.
Ah, there it is.
Because here's what he does. If he wants
Well,
to
he's
protect,
a mob lawyer.
basically, if he wants to protect Abe Attell and the other gamblers like Rothstein, he's got to get Attell and Sullivan away from the grand jury. They cannot be allowed to be called to testify. So he calls Attell and Sullivan to Rothstein's apartment, and he announces that Sullivan is going to Mexico and Attell is going to Canada, vacation with pay. As this is happening, more details about the fix are coming out. Lefty Williams becomes the third player to tell his story to the grand jury, testifying for more than 3 hours. Then Oscar Felsch tells his version of events in an interview with the Chicago American. Quote, well, the beans are spilled and I think I'm through with baseball. I got $5,000. I could have got just about that much by being on the level if the Sox had won the series. And now I'm out of baseball. The only profession I know anything about, and a lot of gamblers have gotten rich. The joke seems to be on us. Fallon, continuing his defense work, created a bold strategy. With Sullivan and Attell out of the country, he would take Rothstein to Chicago to testify before the grand jury. Rothstein told the jury he came to Chicago because he was sick and tired of all the talk of his involvement in the fix. Quote, I've come here to vindicate myself. The whole thing started when Attell and some other cheap gamblers decided to frame the series and make a killing. The world knows I was asked in on the deal, and my friends know how I turned it down flat. I don't doubt that Attell used my name to put it over. And Fallon's strategy worked. After his testimony, Cook County Attorney McClay Hoyne declared, I don't think Rothstein was involved.
Because the mob threatened him.
Rothstein is the mob.
Yeah.
That's
like
big
I said, the
bankroll.
mob threatened him.
So on October 22nd, 1920, the grand jury handed down its indictments, naming the 8 Chicago players and 5 gamblers, including Bill Burns, Sport Sullivan, and Abe Attell. Rothstein was not indicted. The indictments included 9 counts of conspiracy to defraud various individuals and institutions. Shortly after the indictments came down, as the old staff of the Office of State's Attorney was ready to be replaced by the newly elected Robert Crowe, some important papers disappeared. George Kenney, State Attorney Hoyne's personal secretary, probably for money, took the confessions and waivers of immunity that were given by Shakoti, Jackson, and Williams. So Fallon begins to gather some of the best and most expensive defense attorneys in Illinois to represent the players. No one knows who footed the legal bills. It could have been Rothstein, but he was already out of the water, so why would he? It could have been Comiskey. An acquittal would have benefited him, who held out hope that his suspended players could be reinstated. The man who was pushing the most strongly for convictions was the president of the American League, Ban Johnson, who was determined to clean up the sport. Johnson was frustrated with the lack of support his investigation received from Comiskey. We've been working on this case for 3 solid months, and we have not had an iota of cooperation from the Chicago club. The players were arraigned on February 14th, 1921. All 8 players were present, but none of the gamblers were there. A month later, one of the attorneys for the state, George Gorman, announced the players' confessions had been stolen.
Wait, a month?
Yeah, they only announced it for a month. After a
Did
month.
they know before that they were gone?
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
So after it was revealed that the confessions had been stolen, a new set of charges were presented to the grand jury who issued a superseding indictment and added 5 new gamblers. On June 20th,
like 10?
10 gamblers, yeah.
Okay.
So on June 27th, 1921, the case of the state of Illinois versus Eddie Chicote et al. Opened in the courtroom of Judge Hugo Friend. The players faced 5 charges: conspiring to defraud the public, conspiring to defraud White Sox pitcher Ray Schulk, conspiring to commit a confidence game, conspiring to injure the business of the American League, and conspiring to injure the business of Charles Comiskey. George Gorman, who was the state attorney, did not have the confessions, but he did have one key witness, Sleepy Burns, one of the gamblers involved. They found him fishing in the Rio Grande in the small Texas border town of Del Rio and promised him immunity from prosecution for his testimony.
I was waiting for you to say he was sleeping with the fishes.
Before they got a final jury, they had to go through 600 prospective jurors because it's not just a run-of-the-mill trial. These are players for a team that people in Chicago support or hate depending on who they root for.
Yeah. I was going to say I'm shocked, but really I can't be.
One potential juror, William Kiefer, was excused because he was a Cubs fan, and they thought he wouldn't be able to give a just verdict for the other Chicago baseball team. So on July 18th, the trial actually starts with George Gorman delivering the prosecution's opening statement. Quote, the gamblers and ball players started double-crossing each other until neither side knew what the other intended to do. But then he made a mistake. He began to quote from a copy of Chicote's confession, which had been stolen. Defense attorney Michael Ahern, later known as Al Capone's favorite lawyer,
good for him,
objected, and Judge Friend said that any mention of the confessions was out of bounds. So the first witness for the prosecution was Charles Comiskey, who provided a history of his career in baseball. And on cross-examination, defense attorneys tried to show that he had made more money in 1920 than any previous year, meaning that he could not have been financially injured by the conspiracy. Judge Friend did cut off this line of questioning, causing one of the attorneys, Ben Short, to complain, this man is getting richer all the time, and my clients are charged with conspiracy to injure his business. The next day, Sleepy Burns testified, walked up to the witness stand in a green checkered suit with a lavender shirt and lavender bow tie.
And
he spoke in what was described as a low, even tone, which scarcely carried past the jury, and he repeatedly wiped his forehead with his handkerchief.
Please tell me the hanky was lavender as well.
They did not describe the color of the hanky.
You had one job, reporters.
Burns identified Eddie Chicote as the instigator of the fix and as the man with whom he had met at the Hotel Ansonia in September of 1919. When he was asked about his conversations, though, on September 16th or 17th, the defense objected, and the objection was sustained. Burns described meetings in New York during which a possible fix was discussed. He later told jurors he and other gamblers held a meeting 2 days before the start of the series with 7 of the Sox players, during which they promised to pay the players $20,000 for each thrown game. For 3 days, Burns remained on the stand. On cross-examination, the defense attorneys tried to shake his assertion that it was the players that came up with the idea and not him, but they were unable to shake this. Although he was forced to admit that some of his dates were wrong, many in the press thought that he was a star witness who gave a superb testimony. But members of the jury may have been less impressed. A Kansas City Times story from July 21st, 1921 reports, at the end of his 12th hour on the stand, the witness appeared exhausted. His body was limp in the witness chair. His eyes were half closed, but his head was held back, and his answers still came clearly and defiantly. Despite a cataract of innuendos, disparaging remarks about his mentality and character, and other bitter verbal shots heaped on him by his questioners. The next witness was John O'Seas, secretary of the Chicago Cubs, that testified that he met Attell at the Sinton Hotel the day before the World Series, and that Attell told him that he was betting on Cincinnati. The big battle of the trial, though, was how to handle the missing confessions. Judge Friend ruled that no evidence of the confessions could be introduced unless the state could prove that they were made voluntarily and without duress. Former state attorney Hartley Repulgee testified that the statements were made voluntarily and without any offer of reward. But Chakotay testified that he had been promised that he would be, quote, taken care of in return for his testimony, which he assumed meant he wouldn't be prosecuted.
No, taken care of sounds threatening. I would assume I'm about to die.
He also testified that he didn't remember whether he was told that the statement he was about to make could be used against him. The prosecutor offered a different story, arguing that Chakotay was panic-stricken and ran to the grand jury to confess. When he was asked, though, didn't you read about the scandal in the paper and tell everything of your own free will? Chakotay replied, no, they promised me freedom. Joe Jackson took the stand and offered a similar story and said that he was told that after confessing, he could go anywhere, quote, all the way to the Portuguese islands. And when he was asked whether he had the document that he signed before offering a statement, he replied, no, they'd given me their promise. I'd have signed my death warrant if they asked me to. After all this testimony, Judge Friend ruled that the confessions could be used, but only to prove that the players felt guilt. They could not be proved or could not be used to prove that the players were in on the fix. Billy Marag was the final witness for the state. He confirmed Burns' story about the meeting in New York. He also testified that Attell told him that Rothstein had agreed to finance the fix. He also said that the first payment of $10,000 came when Attell pulled the money from a great pile of bills under his mattress. So the case is over.
The case is over, and I feel like nothing has been proved.
The outcome of the trial may have been sealed when Judge Friend gave the jury the charge. He told them that to return a guilty verdict, they must find the players conspired to defraud the public and others, and not merely throw baseball games. The New York Times editorialized that the judge's instruction was like saying, the state must prove the defendant intended to murder his victim, not merely cut off his head. Basically saying, look, if they find that the players conspired to throw baseball games, then clearly they conspired to defraud the public and others. But the judge said that he had to go beyond that. The jury deliberations lasted less than 3 hours. All of them not guilty. To prove how biased this jury probably was, several of the jurors lifted the players on their shoulders and paraded them around the courtroom.
Did they also ask for autographs afterwards?
Probably. So the players are excited. They're happy. That will not last long because we have a new baseball commissioner in town, as we all know.
Oh yeah, that piece of shit.
Judge Keensaw Mountain Landis is here. And he, the day after the jury's verdict, made a statement.
Well, of course he did.
Regardless of the verdict of juries, no player who throws a ball game, no player that undertakes or promises to throw a ball game, no player that sits in conference with a bunch of crooked players and gamblers where the ways and means of throwing a game are discussed and does not promptly tell his club about it will ever play professional baseball. And he meant every word of that. None of the 8 men I named at the beginning and that were indicted on these charges would ever again put on a major league uniform.
I mean, it's fair, but he didn't have to be a little bitch about it.
No. So, how did the fans of the time react? How did they feel? The editorial board of the Cleveland Plain Dealer in 1920 said that the appropriate punishment would be to push the inquiry to the limit, to bring to the bar of justice upon every individual involved in it, and to punish to the limit for everyone found guilty. The Chicago fans, they were more okay with they were upset more about the ban, the lifetime ban.
I mean, seeing as the jury carried the baseball players on their shoulders after the trial, I shouldn't be surprised.
A lot of the newspapers in Chicago declined to comment even on the situation, saying that we wish to forget the stain upon our national game. And they ridiculed the court trial, citing the fact that the players would have to miss games in order to appear in court.
Wow.
Other fans were a lot more extreme about it.
I'm a little scared.
The Trenton Evening Times in 1920 discussed the story of Eddie Cicotte, and they called his decision to take part in the scandal, this is a quote, the most monstrous piece of deception that has ever been perpetrated in the history of American sport, which crushed his wife and family with shame.
I think someone needs to take a chill pill.
Grantland Rice, who wrote a column for the New York Tribune about the scandal, stated, quote, about the players, they are the ultimate scum of the universe, and even the spotted civilization of the present time has no place for them outside a penitentiary. How do you feel about 8 baseball players who fixed a World Series game being called the ultimate scum of the universe?
I mean, I'd say Hitler exists.
Well, he did back then, but he didn't.
Not as we know him.
They didn't know what was going to happen in 1920.
That's fair.
But, like, come on. There were murderers around. H.H.
Yeah.
Holmes had
Yeah.
killed countless people at this point in time in Chicago.
No, it's the baseball players.
Yeah, they fixed a game. Ultimate scum of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
Shoeless Joe Jackson, by ban from life, as I said earlier, they meant ban for life. Shoeless Joe Jackson, the man with, at this point, the 4th highest lifetime batting average in baseball history, is not in the Hall of Fame.
He's outside the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Many fans and former players have argued that he should be inducted into the Hall of Fame, including Ted Williams, a Hall of Famer himself, who said Joe shouldn't have accepted the money. He realized his error. He tried to give the money back. He tried to tell Comiskey about the fix, but they wouldn't listen. Comiskey covered it up as much as Jackson did, maybe more. And there is Charles Albert Comiskey down the aisle from me at Cooperstown, and Shoeless Joe still waits outside. But there it is. That is the 1919 Black Sox. 8 players who fixed the World Series and changed the game of baseball forever by making it the organized sport that we know it as today.
Well, they certainly went down in history.
They did. This was a history story, a scandal, not a freaks of history story, but a little scandal that I wanted to share with you all.
Thank you. Once again, I could not keep anyone straight.
Yeah, I had a lot of names this week.
Mhm.
I've been editing, and the episode that's going to go out this upcoming Wednesday as we're recording is Terrare, and that episode has like one name. It's Terrare.
Yeah,
That's the only name you need to know.
that man ate a baby.
This one has allegedly ate a baby. Come on.
This had so many names. I was confused. John Lawrence is sitting here with me. He also looks confused.
Did he hear the whole episode though, or like just part of it?
No, he was here the whole time.
Okay. Well, that is the end of the 1919 Black Sox. I enjoyed doing the research for this one and telling you my story about it. I'm warning you guys now. My next episode will be Back at Wrestling. It's the pay-per-view. It's Fall Brawl. It's a long one to watch. That's why I'm letting you know now.
Well, Amanda and I are going to get drunk and watch it together.
That's fine.
We are?
You're the one who told me we were.
Oh, okay, then we are.
You did at the end of the last episode.
Yeah. So I'll see you in like 3 weeks.
Our next episode, next week, we're back in the Mystery Machine. It's Scooby-Doo
Yay.
once again.
And we're getting ready for spooky season.
We're getting ready for spooky season, and we're gonna have what some people say is a good series. I'm excited for it.
It is one of my favorites.
We're watching The 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo.
Oh, yeah. One of my favorites.
From 1985. From 1985. Hannah will be reviewing the first episode of the series, To All the Ghouls I've Loved Before. And Amanda will be reviewing the final episode of the series where they catch the 12th ghost. Fuck you, 13th ghost. We're going to let you roam. Where they catch the 12th ghost called Horoscope Scoob.
Ooh.
I know, right? Maybe we'll learn what Scooby's horoscope is. What his sign is.
Are you saying I need to come prepared with his birth chart?
Please don't. You don't need to.
I didn't want to.
I would hate that, actually. But that's it. Unless anyone else has anything else they want to share. Anyone else has anything else they want to share.
No.
All right, then. Well, let's take care of business and wrap up the episode, shall we? If you are watching this on YouTube, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that bell so you're notified whenever an episode is uploaded in the mornings. I've been on an editing binge, so I actually finished one of the bonus episodes, so who knows when that's going to come out. I don't know. I forget what day I actually scheduled it for, but it will be out. If you're listening to us on Spotify, remember to follow the show. If you would like to send us an email with a question, you want to give us an idea for an episode, you want to just give us a comment about the episode, that would be fantastic. You can do so by sending us an email over at
Nothing to see here podcast at gmail.com.
If you would like to see funny memes and previews and no context images about the episodes posted by Hannah, great artwork made by Amanda, possibly quizzes if Instagram gets its shit together every Friday afternoon about that week's episode, then you can do so over on our Instagram page, which is
Nothing to see here pod. As always, here is spelled HEAR.
And that email address and Instagram handle are in the description on YouTube and the episode info on Spotify. Remember to leave us a review, 5 stars only if you would. And please share us with your friends, share us with your family, share us with your enemies, anyone who you think would like us or maybe not like us. We don't care. We just want the listens. Hate listens still count. So please share us around. It helps out a lot. And I think that's all of our business taken care of. We are done. So goodbye and good night.
Bye.
Bye.